All right, well, welcome to the Tape It. All right, well, welcome to the Tape It Till You Make It podcast.
Oh, that's in. That's it. That's our intro.
Yeah, whatever.
Welcome, everyone, to the Tape It Till You Make It podcast. As per usual, I am your host, Nathan Isings, an editor at Nora Vera Visuals, and today is a special episode for a couple of reasons. One is because we here in Vancouver are back to working from home, so today's studio is my apartment living room. But also, today, we have our first Eastern Canada guest, one of my best friends in the entire world, Matthew Waynewright, whose 9 to 5 is a virtual production researcher at SIRT, the Screen Institute of Research and Technology located at Toronto's Pinewood studios. Super exciting. That's where we met, actually. And throughout this, maybe we'll learn a little bit more about how far we go back. But Matt is an actor. He's a writer. He's a director. He's a VFX wizard. He's a musician. He's a father of 4, a husband of 3, and and founder and president of the Nathan Isings fan club. He wears many, many hats. And today we are blessed to have him on the podcast today to talk something that is super exciting to me, something that we don't encounter a lot in our sector of the video industry, which is virtual production, or Stagecraft, as it's known as well. So, Matt, I'm going to give the floor to you for a little bit. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, apart from all the stuff that I just said?
Well, first of all, I don't think I'm worth at least a 15th of the credit you just gave me, but I'll take the mulligan. So you nailed it probably better than I could ever say it, and it's sad because I work here. I'm in this position. I'm the virtual production researcher here at CERT, like you said. And I'm kind of in charge of, piecing together new and interesting solutions and pipelines to virtual production needs. So, like a lot of stuff using real-time rendering software like Unreal Engine. Unity's doing a lot of it now as well. So that's in terms of today, without going too deep into all the other craziness that is Nathan and I's relationship. For those purposes, today I am wearing that hat and donning that mask.
Heck yeah. Now, virtual production is something that, I like to bring up sometimes to people just in casual conversation because it's so cool and such an interesting advancement in VFX. But I'm finding that a lot of people don't really know what it is, and it requires a little bit of rudimentary explanation. It's super cool what it enables us to do in terms of bringing VFX to a set in real time. So why don't you just take us back to the basics here of what exactly virtual production is?
It's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
What is virtual production? And I'll give you a call when I find out. So it's a very, very large, overarching umbrella of things. In terms of what we do day to day, it kind of touches on all of the endpoints of that umbrella. But from what most people know, when they think virtual production, or at least what I would say now with all the stuff that's coming into pop culture about, Disney using LED technology for set extension and all that sort of stuff, most people think towards Mandalorian, right? Or that form of, instead of using a chroma or a keying sort of pipeline, you're taking the background and extending it out with LED screens. But like you said, that can also be considered stagecraft, but virtual production, the term is super broad, right? It also encompasses things like, not a lot of people think of it this way, but it is true, James Cameron's Avatar, right? That technically is virtual production and is one of the first showcases of like real-time motion capture and was paving the way for a lot of this stuff to happen, especially in performance capture with Andy Serkis and Wetted Digital. And, I mean, God, now he's doing underwater mocap, which is both confusing and also impressive. But yeah, virtual production is a very large, overarching term that, in terms of simplifying it, the best that I can, it's using real-time rendering softwares to, like even that's convoluted to think of it. Think of it this way. Storytelling with a heavy emphasis on real-time rendering. That's the best way that I can say virtual production can be summarized.
Yeah. So what about the differences between, like, what are you going to encounter on a virtual production or Stagecraft set versus if you were to go on like a blue or green screen set? Like, what exactly looks different about that?
It's a great question. I think a lot of the things that we discuss, even internally as a team, as well as just, it kind of comes with the territory once you're familiar with virtual production, is two key things, right? Virtual production is just because it doesn't necessarily mean, there's a lot of post-production because you're putting it all on the day, on set. It doesn't detract actual time. Whatever you lose in post-production, you have to gain in pre-production, right? So when you're entering this field, whether it's doing performance capture or, virtual cameras, or what we're doing, which is, or what the industry is leaning towards now, which is LED technology and set extension using real-time softwares like Unreal, you're having to plan so far in advance. You're having to generate these maps and these locations and all these sorts of things, and then also there's tons of different ways to handle that too, right? So while they're building these maps and these ideas with concept artists and kind of really building out the bulk of what the vision is, you have the props department and the set design department who, depending on who you're working with, I know Disney certainly did this for season 2 of Mandalorian, they're taking scans of the props that they made of their set, and then they're putting that into the background and extending that out further. So there's a whole totally different ecosystem that has to go on, before you even think about rolling, right? Whereas I think at least in today's climate, if you were to go to more of a blue screen or green screen workflow, there's enough people in the industry, enough seasoned vets who are going to turn around and be like, all right, let's light it and make sure that the green screen's good, know the lighting and relatively where it's going to be in the environment, and roll, right? And then you have all your little tracking points, and depending on what you're doing, some actual set pieces or a green screen bridge with a green screen background, right? So there's, and then after that, it's just send it off to a post effects house or VFX wizards and let them craft that. And I think one of the crazy things about that is depending on who you're working with, that could be a gamble, right? Because if your lighting isn't correct, if something doesn't look quite right, that is all post-production, right? You got to make that look phenomenal. So, not that the director doesn't have, or actually, I'll take that back, not that any of the key creatives don't have as much real-time input, because obviously they are consulted, they look after different cuts and different dailies and all that sort of stuff. But the number one thing to expect from virtual production, depending on which avenue you're taking, is real-time control over the vision, right? Which is insane to even think about.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I remember when we were both at CERT and we got a little taste of what CERT is now. Sort of at the forefront of developing techniques for virtual production, and it's just so much more immersive, right, than walking into a set and seeing all the green and the blue and trying to really imagine it. But can you tell me a little bit about what the more theoretical side of the filmmaking is on a virtual production set? Like what sort of change in the ways that people make decisions on set when they can be presented with their environment right there on the day and make all these changes right there in real time and get final pixels in camera. What does that do to the filmmaking process versus sending it off in post and watching shots come in one by one?
That's a great question as well. You're nailing it. I think theoretically, what you like? What are you trying to expect? Are you like what do you mean by like theoretically?
Like making creative decisions, like you said, like
how does it change?
Workload. Yeah.
Okay.
How does it change? Like
yeah. Okay. So. Similar to what I was saying before, like there's a shift in headspace between, we'll do this, and, a heavy CG scene or set extension scene, we'll send off to a post-effects house, and, like the saying goes, they'll fix it in post. Now, there are a lot of people who would frown upon that. I get it. But I think along with that idea of instead of spending, obscene amounts of hours in post-production, you're transitioning that to pre-production. I think, casting those two things aside and, margins and producing clearances and all that sort of stuff, I think from a creative standpoint, what changes is your ability to see if something actually works, right? So, there have been instances in the past, and I'm sure people have run into a few of their own of creatives where they're super, super locked into their vision and this is the way they want it to look and whatever. And, then when it comes time to actually put it together, sometimes that doesn't really tend to work out, right? You have to go over to a location and kind of compensate if it doesn't look quite what you wanted or, that sort of stuff, right? So you have those people where the vision is it needs to be this, whatever, and then you have to kind of work around that. With virtual production, or at least I think in terms of what we're discussing, the LED side of it, right, the Mandalorian side of it, you can change anything you want. Like, I can't actually stress that enough and not ramble off into different tangents. You can change almost anything you want. Besides the actors, and depending on your contracts, you might even be able to do that too. You have, with different tool sets and pipelines and all that sort of stuff, you have full control over the environment that you are in. Right now, obviously, if you're creating a full set and this LED is extending the whole thing, you can control your horizon. But in a lot of the cases that we've dealt with here at CERT, and or at least in my time at CERT, the beauty in it is you set up a few practicals, even the tests that we've done, and most of the magic is actually coming from the screen, right? You have your foreground occlusions and all those sorts of things that you have something to play to, but the bulk of everything is just on that screen. You have light being thrown onto actors that you would never get from a chroma screen. Actually, you would get the opposite. You would get spill, which nobody likes. You have something for the actor to actually play to, not just the director and the key creatives. If your actor turns around and has to look at a vista of, ancient Mayan architecture or some sci-fi city or whatever, they're not playing to nothing. They're actually... there's this beautiful, homogeneous sort of creativity that happens in synergy where now the actor's looking at what these amazing other real-time artists have put together, and they're looking at that going, holy shit, I'm staring at a vista, or I'm staring out at a sci-fi city that is in front of me. There's this sense of tangibility to what they're playing to, right? And on top of all of that, if you don't like where something is, or you don't like the placement of something, you don't like the sun, you don't like the fog, you don't like how the cars in the sci-fi city are moving too fast or too slow, that is a switch away, for a grossly oversimplification of things. Take it from me. But that ability to, on the spot, make a correction or a change or a different artistic approach and vision it's crazy. It's unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, no,
it's
for sure.
certainly it's definitely one of those things where theoretically you are able to control almost anything on the set, on the day.
Yeah. Wow. That's
It's powerful.
I mean, you just sold it to me. Yeah. No, that's.
Oh, did
that's
I?
So cool.
In the random
Oh, yeah.
tangent, I am trying so hard to stay on task because we only have like this hour.
Oh, we already made it in my view, but wow. What about the prep that goes into that? So it's so cool that like once you get on set, you basically have a sandbox of the world you built and the story you're trying to tell, and being able to get all that perfect on the day so that you have those perfect or semi-perfect final pixels in camera. But what about all the stuff that happens in pre-production that
To get it to final pixels.
Yeah, exactly. That we
Yeah.
kind of went over, that takes away from post. But yeah, what goes into that exactly?
It's certainly it's both different and the same, right? I mean, one of the larger examples of that is, you have industry prominent software like Houdini and Quixel for both actually film and for video games, and these two things that are universally used for visual effects and all that sort of stuff. And then you have Unreal form a partnership with them, and now Houdini is a functioning engine inside of Unreal, right? Which is, like, so it's kind of familiar in terms of like people who have worked with Houdini in post, and who are working with Quixel in post for doing like heavy CG environments with like real asset scans and all that stuff, right? So it's different, but it's the same, and that's the same part. The different being there's such a weird different place that most of these creatives have to be to understand both the new and frontier technology and how to pull it off, how to even get it to project on a screen. You need to understand the game design side of things, or at least real-time rendering solutions to a degree, which is a little bit of game design and 3D art. And then you need to have film understanding to a degree of understanding what makes good composition. Why does this environment look good? How can we make it look, better on screen, and all these sorts of things. There's it's a job that doesn't have a single description. And right. My heart goes out to every single one of the people who are doing it in the industry right now, because they are doing it like they're pioneers, right? They're these people who love filmmaking and love creativity, but are also like leveraging all these different tools in the tool belt now to formulate this new and cutting edge thing, right? So it's certainly a change, and those people that are doing that, I would argue, become just as prioritized and important as any lead in a production crew, right? Because if they can't do it, then your actual screen and your virtual production itself won't be all that fantastic either, right?
No, absolutely.
It's a change in team. It's a change in mentality. And it's definitely a change in pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the volume and the location and the people managing that is such a important instrument in making sure that the film actually gets made on the day. So let's talk about CERT for a sec, because CERT, CERT's been around for a while, and they certainly weren't formulated to be just VP or Stagecraft, and they've certainly evolved over the years. So and I even remember when I was there a couple of years ago, like even when people ask me what exactly CERT does, and maybe you can relate to this a bit, like I kind of have trouble articulating that in like a single statement. As you just said, it's such a spectrum, right?
I'm with you, right? It's the cool way of explaining it is every single cool piece of technology that is involving real-time technologies, VR, video production, all that sort of stuff. Chances are we've touched it. So, you know, if at the time it was 360 video, you know, SIRT was there. You know, with at first, like, you know, the old-fashioned 3D printed, you know, ring for GoPros that would be able to capture all that, and then obviously, you know, the Fusion came out, and you know that shook the 360 scene for however long it did, and you know, if it wasn't
You're giving me
360,
flashbacks.
yeah, exactly. If it wasn't 360, it was like stereoscopic 3D with two cameras. You know, if it wasn't that, it was VR development and you know, bringing that technology into the frontier or out of the frontier and into, you know, the ether that it is now with all the crazy stuff that's going on. You know, there's definitely a bunch of fingers in different pies for sure. You know, and it's crazy. It's like you said, it's very hard to nail down. But everything that SIRT does do, whether it's all of those things, different, you know, avenues with virtual production or you know, trying to work on different VR solutions or AR solutions or anything like that, you know, there's always an emphasis on like quality, right? And I know this sounds like, you know, the elevator pitch, but like everything that we're trying to do is we try to master it as we're looking at it, right? In terms of just sheer understanding, so we can convey it, because we you know, we also are partnered with Sheridan. We're part of education, right? But you know, everything we try to do is always in that vein of new and mastery of that new. Right? And then we move on.
Yeah, that's so cool. You hit the nail on the head. That sounds like the SIRT that I remember near and dear, but also looking towards the future. I miss it so much. It's cool.
It smells the same.
Does it really? It still smells like this soundstage with no windows?
Yeah, oh, totally. Just with more metal behind me.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, what about you then? What? I mean, I kind of know the answer to this, but what about you made you so gravitated towards a place like SIRT, which is, you know, in such a unique position, both as a research institution and an asset to filmmakers and productions?
Yeah, I mean, without going into a long spiel, I've always been the type of person in creative to want to keep going. It's also kind of a blessing and a curse to a degree, because I don't like to sit in one place for a long time in terms of creative endeavors, and I like to be kind of at the very cusp of something that's challenging, right? And I have always wanted to also put my stamp on the industry, as I'm sure every creative in their right mind has said once or several hundred times. You know, when SIRT was the doorway that, you know, kind of branched both of those super uber important things and values into one spot, right? There's tons of new and emerging things here that, you know, it's unbelievable that I have the opportunity to touch these things before other people get a chance to touch them or look at them or work on them or develop them, you know, as well as kind of like a cinephile myself and or even just a storyteller in general. You know, you get to see all these cool things and know that there's so much awesome stuff that's going to keep happening, right? There's so much stuff that not only am I a part of, but you know, like just in general, where the culture's moving, where where storytelling is going, where creativity is going, and you know, the thing with SIRT that I've noticed even since I came here on co-op and now since I've been here in my actual employment, you know, we're slowly unlocking real-time imagination, right? So the ability to just stare at something and go, I have an idea, and then bringing that idea to life, no matter where that is, right? VR, virtual production, coding, AR, gaming, any of that sort of stuff. That the emotional value to being able to stare down the barrel of that gun and go like, all right, you want to make it? Go and make it right now with this cool stuff that's coming out, right? That's a huge, huge pull for me.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like the Matt Waynewright that I know and love. Sorry, I just outed you.
I'm switching back.
Yeah, switching back. All right. All right. Well, what about how CERT works with other companies and film productions given the chance? What assets and benefits do they present when you guys are trying to attract new business? Like what exactly do you do?
That's a great question. You know, without getting into super nitty-gritty details as well as a promo piece, you know, if people are coming to CERT, there's two things that we can kind of guarantee. R&D is always our forte. We're always looking to help, right, and aid and develop. Really, I think that's the best word. With you, right, and with these people that we work with and these partners, you know, and you know, we can leverage different grants and all these sorts of things. But besides all of that other paperwork and, you know, what we kind of take in from you and you know, try to get money for and all that sort of stuff, I think like the number one important thing is we provide development solutions, right? A lot of the stuff that we're doing, we like keel over when there's a chance, like, hey, yeah, we want to do this, you know, and depending on what we can facilitate and what we're working on developing, you know, we would love to do something we haven't done before or help you in developing something that you nor us have done before, right? That's what a lot of amazing virtual production stuff has become, is like this post-it wall of like, all right, have we tried that yet? No. Is it cool? Yeah. Let's make it happen, right? You have that sort of, there's a hunger there with CERT that is, you know, besides, like I said, all of the R&D and all that sorts of stuff, it's, we develop solutions and pipelines and all of these different things that kind of bring whatever you're looking for to life, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Super cool.
It's hard to quantify, man. There's a lot that we do, and
definitely, yeah.
You know,
and
I wish I could like put a can on the or put a lid on the rambling, but it's tough. It's really really tough when you're trying to like summarize all of this stuff.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, with every project, there's, you know, new obstacles that you've never done before, and I'm sure there's you know,
totally.
new tools that have to be designed specifically for one purpose, and that's, you know, that just adds more notches and tools into your tool belt. And CERT
Totally.
it's just sort of like an
And believe me, I'm grossly oversimplifying and understating a lot of the stuff that we do here. There are, you know, I wish I could do it better.
Well, scaling back to virtual production and Stagecraft as a whole, what do you see as someone who's in the thick of it, where it's happening, where the new stuff is going? Where do you see it going in the next few years in terms of like, is there going to be any, you know, crazy new advancements, or is it going to become even more accessible or mainstream or well-known? Like what do you personally at least see for the filmmaking?
That's a loaded question. I'm going to work through it as concisely as humanly possible. We'll start with the accessibility part, which is something that I wholeheartedly believe in is like possibly the best part of this new virtual production revolution here is you're putting the power back in the little guy, right? The same sort of production quality, freedom, accessibility is given to the guy in his studio apartment with a Rococo suit, the same as it is with, you know, a massive soundstage with performance capture, right? The same people who are, you know, sitting in their basement going, man, I would really love to make that crazy sci-fi movie, but I just don't have the resources, now has the same assets available to them because of Unreal Engine, and, you know, it's free along with their acquisition of Quixels and Megascans and all that sort of stuff. They have the same power that all of those high-up movie studios do, right? So virtual production, just even outside of LED screens and volumes, just that act of, that act of having all of that at your disposal, in terms of like what they have going on with metahumans and virtual humans and, performance capture in a tiny little space, but you can, perform any which way you want wirelessly through a suit. That's huge. That's insane to me. That's the type of technology that every single kid, keels over for when they're kids making home movies with Sony Handycams, right? You're in a situation where now you're like, hold on, whoa, I don't have to wear hockey pads and all these weird sports gear if I want to have like an armored super soldier run around. I can just go on the marketplace and learn this technology that's free and accessible to me, and then I can do it myself. That's huge, right? That's an incredible thing to just hand to a bunch of people who I'm sure in any other situation, in any other time, they wouldn't have an outlet, right? To go to the next point of, where's the future going? Some of the stuff with metahumans right now, especially what was the open beta, the open character creator, and
I think you might need to scale back a little bit. What's a metahuman?
Okay, that's perfect, because I was going to explain that anyway. So, this idea, when you look at for those people who are huge Avatar fans, I super apologize because I don't remember their alien race's name. I believe they're called the Na'vi. I might be wrong.
That sounds familiar.
But
we'll go with
so
that.
think about metahumans and digital humans as Na'vi. Like, you have these blue alien creatures, whatever, and they have to look uber realistic, right? Like film quality realistic, or at least as close as you can be at the time. Another great example of what a metahuman or digital human or virtual human or all these sorts of things is VTubers, which I'm not sure a lot of people are super familiar with, but just because of my time here and some friends and colleagues, I've learned what a VTuber is, and it's like a fully performance captured live 3D model that is doing a let's play, or is doing is having a topic of conversation. It's like keyed out in the corner like a Twitch stream. That's what a virtual human is. So you have basically super realistic, not uncanny valley, digital humans that are placed side by side in the right environment. You can't tell which is which between real and CG. So Unreal has released their counterpart to what was a very popular piece of software called iClone and Character Creator, more so the Character Creator, and has subsequently named it Metahumans. And basically what this is doing is it's creating digital humans that are like super, super real, right? Like, blend shapes are fantastic, cloth sim is fantastic, like just the facial shaders, everything is top notch, right? So you then put that in for free, by the way. You give that to that same kid who's recording a video in his basement with a Sony Handycam and going, hold on, wait, what if I want that person to get out of the giant piece of armor and I need them to look realistic?
Yeah.
Lo and behold, you have that, right? Just right in the palm of your hands, just ready and pliable and malleable, and you can do whatever the hell you want, right? That also isn't just for filmmaking. That's for gaming and anything virtual alike. So that's insane. That's huge, right? Those are, like, the way that things are moving in terms of not only just the incredible feats and the strides that people are making, the speed in which they're doing it.
Yeah.
It blows my mind how fast these people are churning this stuff out in the matter of what, a year, 2 years, really, since the heightened popularity of or the cultural impact of what people know as virtual production, right?
Sure,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's not a step-by-step growth. It's more exponential, right? It's like,
oh, totally,
everything just keeps getting multiplied and stacking on top of each other with every new piece of software. I've even have trouble keeping up with it. I'm not really in that world, but yeah, it's
I'm in it,
absolutely
and I
amazing.
find
Yeah.
it really hard to keep track of everything, right? It moves
Well,
super
yeah.
fast.
Definitely, yeah. Well, I think that just speaks to how exciting it is, right? But
Oh, totally. Never
yeah.
a dull moment.
But yeah, as you were saying, it at the core of it, it really can put the power and the quality and the imagination into pretty much anyone's hands with the basic tools and the will to get to know
Totally.
the software. And yeah, so how did you start learning this from the ground up? Because you learned this pretty quick. I watched you pretty much
Yeah.
step by step
Yeah,
ever
it's
since
very
both of us
true.
learned of its existence 2 glorious summers ago. So yeah, tell me a little bit about your journey. And
Man, I'm gonna give Unreal just the crispest high five right now. So Unreal, which is, I'm not gonna badmouth Unity. Unity's a fantastically strong program, and they are making strides in virtual production, the same as Unreal is in their own right? But in my personal experience, it was Unreal that kind of like shook the tectonic plates below me and lit the fire under my butt, and I was like, whoa, look at all the stuff that's available.
Yeah.
And the reason I was able to think that was because of the thing that we talked about before, which is accessibility, right? Unreal Engine 4 and a lot of the powerful tools locked inside of that thing are free, right? You can download the SDKs and the engine itself for free. You can do it right now. In fact, I implore you, go download it. Like, it's incredible.
yeah,
And by having accessibility to that, on top of their, again, free, their online learning, like their online courses and stuff like that, and programs by people both at Unreal and people who Unreal has worked with, I was able to learn everything in, one sitting if I so chose, right? It was listed there for me. They do a fantastic job of breaking it down. And at the time when I was looking at it, I was, I'm a director-writer for sure, but, there a lot of those ideas required some form of post-production. I had been doing VFX for, at that time, if I'm counting even the most rudimentary, about 7-8 years, right? So the knowledge was there, and the hunger was there for learning some form of visual effects pipelines. And what Unreal was opening the door, or what Unreal was doing by opening that door, was like, hey, this is a whole sandbox that you can play in. You can apply all of the same filmic and visual effects principles that you have come accustomed to, and then you can make a whole world. Have fun. And
Yeah.
you
And
tell that
render
to
it in
somebody
real
like
time.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, in real time. Yeah, and you tell that to somebody like me, and I'm like, where's the Kool-Aid? Like, let's go. I'm in. So, that was such a leap in not sudden interest, but sudden spark, right? It was like, oh, okay, this is definitely where things are probably going to go.
Yeah.
And even at that, even taking that time and studying for as long as I did, and kind of teaching myself the way that I usually have in most cases, even coming to CERT, there were moments where I was like, okay, I thought I knew, and then there's all these other cool avenues that I can follow and learn about, and all this sorts of stuff. It's a beast. It's an ecosystem for sure, right? But yeah, no, to answer your question simply, it was just, it ticked all my boxes as a creative. And then I was looking at where the industry was going, and there was that kind of floating, ethereal goal of, well, I want to do something like really important to help the industry, to further the industry, to kind of put my stamp on it and say, hey, I was there for when that happened.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, that's what it offered, right? So that's
Super cool.
why I got in.
Yeah. Oh man, it's super cool what you're doing. I every time I think about it, I'm just like, man, Matt is having the absolute time of his life. He's in a technology sandbox, getting paid to figure out new stuff, and it's so cool.
I'd be inclined to agree. In between the moments of staring at a screen until nausea, and as drool drips down my face, because I'm just like, well, hold on, let's just figure this out. all of those moments aside, when you see that projected on the LED screen, or you see an entire virtual set that you've gathered all the mocap for, and you've done VCam for, and it's this whole CG thing that just came to life like this in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
You're a kid in a candy shop with
Yeah.
a big Halloween bag and no parents around.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, well, you've probably made a few environments in your day. What is that process like? Does it happen like out of a volume?
It does, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Like a
So-
vacuum. Like what? How do assets play into it? Where do you gather that from?
A great place is two great places. One is the Unreal Marketplace. If this is now speaking to people who took the advice at about 10.5 minutes ago about downloading Unreal and getting serious about it, they're really interested. The Unreal Marketplace is a phenomenal place for free content and assets, right? So if you're thinking about, I need either a spark of inspiration, or I have a cool idea for like a fantasy cavern or whatever, I promise you, type in whatever phrase you're thinking, and assets from a whole bunch of amazingly talented and hardworking people will pop up, both for free and for a very small price. And in terms of the spectrum of what cost is to quality, it's you have. I type in ice cavern or like temple, whatever, and the difference between like a $30 purchase of an environment artist putting it together for you, and like $150 artist, you will be hard pressed when you start to find any given difference between quality of performance or look or aesthetics or whatever. And then once you have those assets, they're yours to use. Right, you can just move them around, put them in a different scene. So that's like the main one. The other one that I personally love is I love Kitbash 3D. I can't get enough of Kitbash 3D. They are, they come out with packs regularly. They are top-notch quality.
Yeah.
They are phenomenal. Another side note to that, though, that runs in parallel to the Unreal Marketplace, in terms of assets, is Unreal acquired a company called Quixels, or all their subsidiary stuff, so Megascans and all that sort of stuff.
Tell me more about
Quixels, Quixels is a company that does like LiDAR scans of real environment pieces, like rocks and trees and branches and snow and all that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And Unreal, seeing what that meant for real-time rendering and all that sort of stuff, they acquired them, partnered with them, whichever one, but they now have access natively within Unreal Engine using their like bridge program. So you can go onto Quixel, you can find like these the tiny little packs that they have for you, like they're in collections. You can have like Iceland up in the middle of nowhere with these beautiful rocks that are just like look right out of a sci-fi film. You have beautiful snow vistas, you have interior, you have grunge textures, you have all of this stuff, and that's for free. Primarily, that's for free. So in terms of generating assets and or looking for assets to build or to construct or to even just tinker around with and see what you like, there is a plethora of options for the zero budgeters out there. It's crazy.
I mean, I didn't even know about that. I mean, I've been saying that this whole show. It's like I didn't even know of that. It's like I don't follow it so closely, but I love learning about every single new development and accessible thing that comes into our hands. Yeah, it's
you
so
and me
cool.
both, buddy.
Yeah, except you get paid for it. Oh man. Oh, that's so cool, man. What do you see happening in where you are right now in Toronto, in the middle of literally Toronto's film industry, where there's talks of Pixamondo getting into it and volumes popping up left and right? Like what does that tell you about?
Well,
where
in terms
virtual
of what's
production's
happening right now in Toronto at this very second, I'm staring at a blank wall. And then after this, I'm probably going to get dinner. But in terms of industry,
I'll tell you right now, it's probably snowing outside.
Yeah. The day that I finally get to do the podcast with Nathan subsequently is the same day that hell froze over. So, it's amazing how that works out.
I'm not a huge fan of Toronto either, but I wouldn't equate it to hell.
That's fair. No, it's a great question. I think right now what's happening is a very lagged explosion, right? Mm-hmm. It's happening, but it's kind of like there are certain companies and certain things that kind of have some people have their finders out, like they're interested in getting involved, but they're not quite sure, much like how you were even before this podcast, like what does all of this mean? You have other companies that are like, we know what it means, we want to get in on it, but the cost of building an entire soundstage is because to them and in their extent of their knowledge, it's black or white. It's either you have a 280-degree curve that's Mandalorian size, or you have a Lilliput monitor. There is in-betweens, right, that you can that are cost-effective for everybody in terms of developing spaces. And then you have the creative side of it, right? You have the people that aren't working or developing production houses or studios or anything where they are. That's where the majority of the shrapnel is coming from. These people are firing off in all these different directions because they have all these tools now, right? They have all this stuff so easily accessible to them that it just keeps moving. Right? Most of the time there's this thing where the ball gets rolling in film or in terms of creativity because it's being leveraged by very, very high up people, whereas that's kind of happening, but also at the same time, the reason that's happening is because there's so many creatives right now popping off in different directions that they're going, okay, well, this is clearly very, 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 very accessible. And to a degree, very future-proof, because there are so many people creating amazing content that are being put on, the Unreal Marketplace. People who are developing their own systems, encoding their own IK within Control Rig. Meta-humans, digital humans, environmental artists, set extensions. One of the things that hopefully we'll get to touch on near the end that I cannot express my excitement enough is real-time foreground compositing. That's just, oh my god. But
we're almost out of
that sort of stuff.
So why don't you talk about it right now, since we're approaching the end of the timer here.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
Okay, so real-time visual effects or real-time in-camera visual effects, real-time in-camera foreground compositing effects, whatever. That whole stuff is, imagine, all of this crazy CGI work or all of this very powerful renders or rendering. I don't even know how I'm going to explain this. I'm so excited I can't even make my tongue work. So picture all of the amazing things that Unreal, or at least in your mind, all the things that I've said Unreal Engine can do and other real-time development softwares or real-time rendering softwares. Yeah. And imagine that in real time through the lens of your camera, also having foreground elements and visual effects triggered by the actor's performance, the environment, the volumetric capture, so where the camera is in the virtual space and the real space, all of that sort of stuff. To simplify that, if I wanted to be in the background of, in the foreground of a spaceship, right?
Yeah.
I can, in real time, key that out, so put myself on a green screen or wherever I may be.
Right.
Blue screen, green screen, whatever. And let's say I want to have something fly by. I don't know if anybody who's watching this is a fan or purveyor of the game Destiny, but let's say a ghost comes floating by, right? Those little robots.
Cool.
On key, on trigger, it will pop up in front of the actor, float around them based on wherever they are in volumetric space because it's being tracked.
Yeah.
And you have visual effects, either like the firing of a gun or the ghost or light effects or sparks or something like that in real time, coming through your camera, being captured in Final Pixels, right? Now, that is me blue skying it because there is a lot of hard work, dedication, and a lot of unsolved problems that come before that
Yeah,
but on
for sure.
paper and potentially, which is what we're here at CERT, we're trying to make our way to that as well. There's tons of other creatives doing it in the industry as well. That's huge. That's incredible to me. Is that you're using a real-time rendering software with real-time volumetric tracking to effectively make your film in one shot, right?
Yeah. With the
Again, grossly
practicality
oversimplified, but that's
Yeah.
pretty much what it could be.
with the practicality of like practical effects being
Oh yeah,
incorporated into your that's so cool.
yeah.
Wow.
It's
So,
nuts. For
yeah.
for anyone watching, sorry, Ned, just before, for anyone watching, I want to make sure that all the stuff that I'm saying, people know where to go or how to access this sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
So Unreal Engine, like I said, you can Google Unreal Engine and download it. Quixel is Quixel. But all of these different intricate sorts of things, these are all plugins that are native to Unreal Engine and all that sort of stuff. The thing that I'm discussing, or at least the route in which we're hoping to achieve that in Unreal, is a facet called Composure, right? So it works on a layering sort of system, and similar to, you can do Nodal, I believe, but it's similar to After Effects and all that sort of stuff. But if you're looking to get into it or looking to research it or do some stuff, there are some unbelievable creatives that are at the forefront of this as well.
Yeah.
And it's called Composure, right? So if anyone's really interested in foreground compositing or in-camera VFX, Composure is what you want to Google. All the stuff that's happening here and all the stuff that I've had the privilege to talk to Nate about and subsequently everybody watching, it is just a marvel to kind of get a chance to witness it every step of the way as it happens in real time, no pun intended. And it really is incredible. So if you're somebody, actually I would even just say if you're anybody trying to, learn more about the industry that you're going into, or you're just, have a wild imagination and want to find new ways and bringing that to life, this sort of stuff is definitely worth looking into and is, unbelievably interesting, at least from my personal perspective.
You were guiding people into where they can go to learn all this stuff from the ground up on the most basic level and the most advanced level. Where do these resources exist?
Yeah, great question. So there's Unreal Engine, which is already free. I've said that multiple times. Only because I'm passionate. I want you people to you want to learn it. You can
for sure.
all these resources.
Yeah, that's little known. Like, it's like the most powerful game engine in the world, and it's
Oh,
totally
yeah.
free. That
Oh
blows
yeah,
my
I have
mind.
no problem saying that. Like in terms of what it can do now, and I have that's my opinion, but it is. Yeah, so there's Unreal Engine, obviously. There's Unreal Online Learning, which is huge. Just a plethora of different online resources for whatever you want to learn. If you're familiar with coding in Python and you want to bring it into Unreal Engine, there's a tutorial for that. You want to learn how to build a world from the ground up and how to do it without costing yourself performance, which is a huge thing that a lot of people forget about. There's a tutorial for that, right? You want to learn how to use Sequencer to use your own in-game cutscenes. There's a tutorial for that, right? There's a lot on that Unreal Online Learning that is invaluable when you're first starting out, or even if you're a veteran. A lot of the stuff that they talk about ranges in advancement and knowledge base, right? Another phenomenal place to go for tutorials is YouTube. YouTube is amazing, and much like how the content that is being developed now is developed by hungry creatives that are just willing to throw their stuff out there because they just want to showcase all of the amazing stuff that they're doing, that same tenacity applies to their willingness to give you information, because the beauty in this virtual production thing is, much like anything that has enough steam, it's a community, right? There's a lot of people who are working together to solve problems, develop new ways of doing things, getting excited over a new release or a new patch note or whatever, right? So YouTube is a phenomenal place for all of this stuff. Those are the three really big resources, obviously, but there are tons of other places. Forums, Unreal Forums on their actual site they have a forum page. All of these places are phenomenal if you want to learn from the ground up. You have zero Unreal experience. you will know if you watch everything back to back, you'll know everything you need to know to start making your own films or games or animatics or anything.
Wow. Yeah. That it's amazing that all of that is just,
Waiting for you to watch it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things that it sounds so amazing, but it really must take that motivation to really condition yourself to learn it, though, because it's so, at least from an outside looking in, like it is very complex, but as you've testified, it's extremely rewarding once you really get into it and understand
it's,
it. Yeah.
To use the sandbox analogy, when you're a kid and you don't really know how sand works, shout out to Anakin, when you see somebody make a sandcastle, there's a whole way of going about doing that, and they build this thing and they pop it up and you're like, oh my God, how did that happen? The same sort of thing applies to that sandbox as it does this one, right? There's lots of technical jargon and, it might seem intimidating at first, but the reason you keep playing in the sandbox is because you want to do that thing. You want to make the sandcastle. You want to play imaginary, or you want to play with your imagination and run free with it. And the only thing that's stopping you in the real sandbox is learning how to use that bucket and the sand in conjunction with each other to make a sandcastle. The exact same thing applies in this giant virtual sandbox, right? It all seems intimidating at first, but right when you get your hands on the most basic form of creating, which is like placing a block and then placing another block, and then you have Minecraft, you at least for me, it was like, all right, now what else can I do? Right? And that hunger evolves into this, okay, well, now I can do this, but what if I tried this with this, right? So the motivation part of it is you don't go to the beach and you're like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to make a sandcastle. You go to the beach and you make a sandcastle, right? You just do it. And that's what eventually happens in the virtual sandbox when you want to do something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. And I cannot think of a better note to end this podcast on. If you want to do something, you just do it, and it'll take a lot of hard work and conditioning yourself and disciplining yourself to learn the craft, but once you're in it, man.
Oh, totally. And you don't
that's amazing, yeah.
you also don't need to like strong bar yourself or isolate yourself in a room with your sifu and like I have to like hone in on this and whatever. The community that's out there is, chances are they failed more times than you've tried to start. So going out and learning all these things from them, they're invaluable, right? Be a part of that community. It might be intimidating at first to go out and talk to these people or, message people about, what you might think is a stupid question or, they might have already solved it, but realistically, like, that's how you grow. That's how you learn, right? And if you can, like, expedite the process by not making the same mistakes that other people have and they're relaying how to not make those mistakes, that's fantastic, right? That's only making it actually easier for you to go and do the thing you want to do faster.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any sort of closing advice for anyone sort of trying to break into this very vast and emerging world?
To virtual production or like being creative?
Well, let's do a bit of both. I mean, virtual production in the sense that it's, there seems to be a huge, at least as an impression, like there seems to be a big barrier to entry, but as you've kind of illuminated, there really isn't. But what would you say to people who are trying to, or at least have dreams of emerging into this universe?
Without trying to sound overly prophetic, there is not a barrier in existence that can withstand, the pounding of creativity, right? You can say, or in some cases, unfortunately, make an excuse of, oh, well, this is in my way, or this, or I can't do this because of something that's stopping me. Realistically, if you want to create, there's always avenues for it, right? There's before there was a camera, there was a pen and paper, or there was a stage, and before there was a stage, there was a rock, and before there was the rock, there was like a whole community of people that were willing just to listen to your stories around a campfire. There is, if you're willing to see it in that sort of perspective, there should be nothing stopping you. And actually, in today's environment, there is nothing stopping you for the most part, especially with this technology and Unreal Engine and stuff like that. You know, you have this unbelievable access to not just amazing quality assets. We're talking industry quality, right? Like an unbelievably and unfathomable amount of content for you to draw from and make your own, right? That's crazy. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's quite a different world, I'm sure, than the last generation growing up trying to learn filmmaking. It almost seems
Totally.
like, yeah, it almost seems like we're at a time where we can basically do anything if we have the drive to just figure it out, because there are tools literally everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think to just to eat from a creative standpoint, Nate, you'll probably be inclined to agree. You know, that idea of drive is not, 100 or 0 on the dash, right? Is if you're trying to learn this or it seems intimidating, that's totally fine. And you're right, it is. A lot of the stuff that, at face value is very, very scary or daunting, especially, there are people that I've discussed this subject with that are, trained and very well versed in traditional filmmaking and production pipelines, and you throw this curveball at them, and they're like, "Well, what the does anything that I knew apply to this whole new thing?" And it does seem intimidating, but just because you're intimidated at first, or you open up that can of worms and it seems really tough, and you do a couple of courses and then you stop because you're like, oh my God, it's a lot. It's okay to take time to process, right? That's what I did. Was I thought, okay, I'll just hunker down and pile drive through it and go and do what I need to do to learn it all in one go, and that just wasn't the case, right?
Yeah. No, you're totally right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This is definitely stuff that we have never, ever touched on, and I learned a ton, just as I do every time I talk to you about this stuff. So thank you so much for lending us your knowledge, your beautiful voice.
Thank you for having me,
and,
man.
Yeah.
It's an honor.
Oh, well, it's an honor to have you. So thank you very much, man. Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll chat again soon.
You too.
All right, sweet.
See you, everybody.